So, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the second of our webinar series of Making Place. Before we dive in, just a quick few notes. Please make sure your microphone is muted as we get started, and I will start recording this session. So, to share on our YouTube channel afterwards, if you'd rather not appear on camera, feel free to keep your video off throughout. And for any questions, we'll have a dedicated Q&A moment at the end of the webinar, so after the panel. So please hold on to your questions until then, but you're welcome to drop them in the chat as they come to mind or ask live when we open up the Q&A. And lastly, we're also live streaming this session on YouTube, so for anyone who couldn't join the Zoom due to capacity, but although I don't think it's an issue right now, but we've got a team also moderating both the Zoom and YouTube chats, so questions from both platforms will be picked up. But let's get to it. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to the Inclusive City project for the new guests who were not present yesterday. So if you were here yesterday, please bear with me for a couple minutes. But yeah, so this webinar is part of the Inclusive City project. It's a 3-year project under the Driving Urban Transitions partnership, and it reimagines the 15-minute city concept through the lens of social inclusion, diversity, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And our mission is to help create public spaces that work for everyone, whether multi-generational, gender inclusive, and also socially equitable, but without falling into the trap of gentrification or over-commercialization. So we currently are doing this through 4 urban living labs in partner cities across Europe, including Budapest and Oslo, who are here today, but also Rotterdam and Vienna, where we test placemaking methods directly with local communities. And today's session, Making Place, is what we bring some of that thinking to you. But we have 3 panel speakers today who will be diving into the topics of going beyond good intentions and what it takes to coordinate policy, people, and place. And we have a special guest speaker coming from the municipality of Milano, which we will introduce shortly, and 2 representatives from our Oslo and Budapest Urban Living Labs, similarly to yesterday. We'll be building on some insights from a series of in-person policy exchange events that we held in each city, where we brought together local stakeholders and policymakers to discuss these exact themes. But before that, just a couple slides to showcase the local context. So with Milano, we'll focus on the municipality's involvement with the URBACT project called Tacticity. Tacticity helps Milan and partner cities test and scale low-cost, high-impact urban solutions. So through participation, it improves urban life and strengthens citizens' roles in shaping public space and policy. But building on Milan's, oh, apologies. I'm going to record the session. I apologize. So, sorry, going back, building on Milan's technical urbanisms experience, the project offers a practical method for creating inclusive, shared, and place-based interventions. And it draws in particular on initiatives such as open squares in every neighborhood and open squares in every school. So by addressing challenges such as traffic and pollution, inequality, and climate pressure, this project sees public space as key to inclusion and well-being, and its goal is to really create more accessible and resilient people-centered cities. So you have some photos here. And then our next snapshot is of our Urban Living Lab of Oslo. Oslo's takes place in the Old City districts. It's a diverse community with strong grassroots, solidarity, and bottom-up social movements, and has a strong history of multiculturalism. The Church City Mission moved the Enga institutions, which provides housing for people with substance use disorders, to the district in February 2026. And the goal of the institution and neighboring businesses is to create a local environment that enables interactions between the institutions and the neighborhoods in a way that benefits both the residents and also the local community. And so given this context, especially for the inclusive city, the Urban Living Lab means really connecting the physical accessibility to the 15-minute concepts with social means for inclusion. So that means that vulnerable individuals should really be treated with dignity and able to develop a sense of belonging where they live. And last but not least, our Budapest Urban Living Lab, which is located in the city center. It's in the 8th districts, and it's also known as the most intercultural street of Budapest, with a high street of beautiful historic style buildings. And the consortium members of Budapest consist of the Budapest University of Technology and Economics, specifically the Department of Urbanism, the Contemporary Architecture Center KEC, which is an independent association, and Rev 8, which is a municipality-owned city development company. Their main focus was on empty premises. So this year they organized a 7-week-long festival of vacant shops where 6 municipality-owned shops found new residents. And in this period, they organized around 200 programs with very diverse stakeholders to activate the neighborhood and encourage people to experience something new. So we have some snapshots from the open festival in the slide. But enough of me. I'd like to introduce to you our moderator and speakers for today. So our moderator today is Jorge. So he is an urban researcher from Utopian. Sorry, I wrote speaker, but it's supposed to be moderator. So Jorge, pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Rosalia. Thank you. No worries. I was a speaker yesterday, so that's why I also wanted to say hello to everyone that also joined our yesterday's webinar. And yesterday I was participating as a ULL member from Vienna, and today I'm moderating. And it's an honor today to have also a guest speaker. So yesterday we had Milagros Urti, which brought a more theoretical and research-oriented perspective to the topic we're discussing today. We have the honor to have Vanya Kupari, our an URBACT project coordinator from the municipality of Milan, that will also contribute to the exchange with Kim Wegner and Lonzi Tobias. So first, a few words to introduce everyone. I give the word to Vanya.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I'm Vanya Kupari and I work at the municipality of Milan. I worked before in the staff of a deputy mayor, and now I coordinate the Tacticity project, which is a URBACT project, and I coordinate also the ULG group.
Thank you, thank you. So now we can move to the speaker from the Budapest ULL. Lonzi.
Hello everyone, I'm Lonzi Tobias from Budapest, and as it was introduced, I'm working for Rev 8, which is a company. I would say it's quite an atypical concept in our consortium. So we are a municipality-owned company focusing on city development, and our team consists of a very diverse group of engineers, architects, social workers, sociologists, all sorts of people working together to make our district a better place.
Kim?
Great. Hi, my name's Kim Leaker. I'm based in Oslo. I work for a company called Natural State. We work with place-based strategies for urban development. So we're a private company, but we do some commercial projects and some research projects like this one. My background's in community engagement, so I work with how do people have more voice in public spaces where they live, and I'm the project lead for the Oslo ULL for Inclusive City.
Great, thank you very much. And as you heard already, the profiles together are covering a spectrum from public to more private organization, which is also very will enrich our conversation. So before the first question, I would like to recall the fact that we're working on inclusive place making, so we're focusing on a view of place, not just a space. And this is why, and I say this because this brings us right to the first question that we wanted to address today. How can municipalities recognize and govern spaces not only as property assets, but as places with social value that require shared governance? Who can start with this? I see Vanya smiling.
Only because I'm a happy person. I can start, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Of course I can. So in Milan, we have been working to recognize public spaces not just as municipal assets, but as places where communities are formed and social value is created. This is possible when the municipality works together with the residents, civic organizations, and local stakeholders to care for and also to activate these spaces. I think that in our city we have a good example that is Piazza Aperte, open squares, because through this program, spaces that were once designed primarily for cars have been transformed into places for people. So they have become places where people can meet, spend time together, and strengthen social connections. But I'd like also to speak about some example about buildings which belongs to the municipality. And for example, we have a kind of network of neighborhoods houses. And today there are more than 60 community spaces called neighborhood houses across the city, offering free cultural, recreational, educational, and social activities for residents. And these places are not simply places where services are delivered, because they are places where people meet, collaborate, and build a sense of belonging or a sense of community, we can say. And they are really proximity hubs and essential points of reference in local neighborhoods, in line with the 15-minute city model. And I chose another example, the last one, of public buildings, concerns the spaces located within social housing contexts, because there were these empty spaces, and now these spaces are leased by the municipality at subsidized rates to associations and organizations that can contribute to community life by providing services, promoting social and cultural activities. And in this way, these places become important for inclusion and social cohesion within neighborhoods.
Hey, it's very interesting that you already mentioned your project, Open Squares, Piazza Aperte. That's because that implies also that there is a political commitment behind it, right? Could we say so? Okay, so could you tell us more about the shared governance supporting this program, Piazza Aperte?
Yeah, of course, we can say that the political commitment was really important, because we tried the first open square in 2018, like experimentation. And then there were a public call. There were two public calls in 2020 and 2022. And I think that it's really important, because we received the proposal directly from citizens, and it was more important for the commitment of this proposal, because we choose to build almost 60 open squares, called Open Square for neighborhoods, and then Open Square in front of the schools. So the second one are streets for children and streets for schools. And I think that the political commitment plus the proposal directly from the citizens was really important for the consent about this program, because of course there are some people who are not happy to lose their parking spot, for example. So it's sometimes it's difficult to speak with citizens, and it's really important that there is a big political commitment, but also that we can say that we didn't choose the streets, but that people asked to transform these streets.
Great. Thank you very much. And of course, like Tick City is a Urbact project, so it's a network of cities like in more on the frontier of this approach, but within our ULLs, we are at a state where we're still having this difficulty. So maybe I would like to hear from the case of Budapest. How are you trying to promote a different view of these spaces, not just an asset, but more towards the social or the potential uses for the local communities?
Yes, in our case, we were rather focusing on empty shops. So these were municipality-owned spaces, but not necessarily the public space itself. During the festival, we used the public space a lot, but the bigger transformation rather happened inside these municipal properties, these empty shops. And it was also very important that the methodology that we were using was an existing methodology from the Contemporary Architecture Center. They already had the Open Festival in other parts of Budapest. So the main idea is to involve municipal properties that are empty for so long and offer it for free for newcomer entrepreneurs. And this is good for the municipality because, you know, even if the property is empty, they still need to pay for the utilities. There are other costs which are happening. And if a shop is empty for long, that's either not good for the street or regarding like safety issues, public cleanliness, and all of these. If a shop is empty for a long while, it won't get occupied easily. So yeah, in CAKE's methodology, it would be also important to involve private owners, but that was very challenging. So in this case, we could not really involve private shop owners. So we were mainly focusing on the municipality, how to even show that shared governance is needed here. So we had to find a way in the legal a legal way how we can involve Contemporary Architecture Center as an actor in this process. Because they were also sort of part of this shared governance because they had the responsibility on the shops during the festival. So it was very important to build trust in the municipality that they can have an NGO doing that, getting involved in this process. And make them ready to do this experiment. Obviously, there's a helpful background as we are also like sort of part of the municipality. We also have a deputy mayor that the Placemaking Europe community might know, Daniel Radai, who's also an urbanist himself. So thankfully we have like a helpful background, but still like to go through bureaucracy and a lot of different parts of the municipality had to be involved in this process. First, we had to build trust that they can work together with us and work together with the Contemporary Architecture Center. And the other, if I'm thinking about the ownership part, when we got to the process that the newcomer entrepreneurs could occupy these premises, that was also a sort of ownership. Like many of them actually started to talk about how much they realize that they have an effect even on the public space in front of their shops, and also how new people started to come to their places who became regulars. And obviously we had to go through social issues because in our neighborhood there are quite some issues regarding homelessness and public safety and drug usage. And this was all there, but we experienced that there is actually an impact of occupying these places, and that created difference in this 7 week, and we hope even in long term.
Thank you. And maybe we can hear from Oslo instead. How are you working on the ULL on these terms of how to promote a different view of spaces, not just as assets, property, but also towards the use that can be done? This is very related to the placemaking.
Yes. Yeah, I think I just want to speak quickly to kind of the relationship with the municipality first, because we had a bit of difficulty, a challenge with the ULL at the beginning, because the municipal department that we applied for this project together with we got a new government in Oslo, municipal government, and then that department, which was called Bykubben, which is Center for City Life, was actually stopped. And so that was that it no longer exists. So this is kind of, I think it was really interesting talking about this idea of collaborating with the municipality and building trust, and the issues with what happens when the government changes, and then an entire municipal department it no longer exists, who, for example, we had applied for a project with. So that's one of kind of the challenges, I think, from all different sides. Also, when you're working with a private company, so because we lose partnerships sometimes. But so from our side, since we are a private company, we of course don't have kind of the same ability to guide how public space is used in the same way as municipal departments. But so our approach with the Oslo Living Lab was to look at the diversity of use of public spaces. So we were looking at what we did what we call diversity mapping for social infrastructure. So what social infrastructure was there or is there, and how do different groups use this? For example, not just looking at traditional, what you traditionally call social infrastructure like libraries or youth clubs, but the kind of social infrastructure that's a bit more marginal, that's used, barbershops for certain immigrant groups, specifically men in Oslo, will use barbershops as social infrastructure. Immigrant women from certain groups will use seamstress shops as social infrastructure. So we were kind of mapping these out, and then because we were specifically working with vulnerable groups, like people with substance use disorders, then we were looking at also what kind of social infrastructure do they use, and we found that our approach was actually doing interviews with them. So finding out, what they use, and for example, corner stores, which don't really seem like social infrastructure, but where they can buy something cheap like cigarettes, and there's someone that a familiar face working in the store. So ways for people to connect in the neighborhood is really important. And then so kind of bringing that back to how places are, what is the social value, and then how places are governed. Then what we did was have city walks looking at these different spaces, and how we could highlight these as valuable spaces that are kind of unseen. We call them unseen city walks. And the different kind of organizations or even businesses. The city here tends to value organizations or kind of in their use of public space, like I said, like libraries or youth clubs or nonprofits, but not these commercial businesses that are often acting as social infrastructure, which we thought was an interesting place to highlight, because these are often undervalued.
Thank you very much, everyone. Very interesting, Kim. I would like to go more in depth, because you mentioned the diversity mapping and the city walk. So these are placemaking tools, you want to call them like this, or just punctual activities. But we know that this change of perspective that also you mentioned, right, on the spaces needs also a more sustained engagement, no? So I wanted you to share more with us. How do you sustain the dialogue over time, and to manage also the expectations from the people that might join your events?
I think that's really difficult, and I don't know if I have a great answer for that. But I think it's about building relationships, with different organizations, and because there are organizations. Like, so going back to this kind of social infrastructure, social value, there are organizations that are already doing this. And I saw our role as kind of facilitating, because how do we kind of make these links with people who are already serving these roles? So one of the small businesses that we were working with a little bit during the project was a vintage clothing shop on the street. It was just a one-person business owner, manager ran the store completely herself. She would always put, she had a couple chairs and a little table inside the shop, very small shop, and she would put them out on the street, or people could come in and grab a chair. But she's struggling to stay. And as Lonsi was saying, that when these businesses, when you lose these shops, both from the municipal perspective, you have trouble people coming in, but then when you have these shops that provide a lot of value, she told us a story about a woman with Alzheimer's, dementia, who would come down and sit every day in one of these chairs in front of the shop because she couldn't go any further. You know, she wasn't going to walk to a library and sit or sit in another public space. So this idea of proximity was super important. But okay, I didn't really answer your question. Basically, I think that building the connections between different organizations and the municipality is kind of all we can do. Highlighting these, so that's what we tried to do with our walks, is just to show to show the city that these are really important spaces. We were working a bit, when we lost our original partner, we started working with the health department in Oslo, and we had a conversation with them about these places, and they said, maybe we can make a campaign like put out your chair and give support to different businesses for, you know, putting out chairs in front of their businesses. But that, yeah, of course, is something for the future that they'll work on. So I think it's about building these relationships and then hoping that once you've built these connections and kind of framed the ideas through highlighting these practices, that people will push them forward in the future.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Of course, we are in a research project within the Inclusive City. So we are collecting this reflection. This is part of the webinar is part of this knowledge exchange process. So we are anyway stressing we did this question, even though we are still finding the way. But maybe we could bring this question to our guests from the Municipality of Milan, because they have had a longer trajectory, as she mentioned, with the public policy. So again, the point is to talk about how to sustain the dialogue over time, and how to really think of participation that goes beyond the implementation of single interventions.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to mention that, of course, we organize participatory processes that usually include 4 or 5 meetings, and during these processes we work together with residents to discuss the future of the public spaces, for example, when they are really important for the city, or the major urban transformation such as new metro lines and other projects that will have a significant impact on the city. Of course, the goal of this participatory process is to share understanding and also incorporate local knowledge into the design process. And if I mentioned before Piazza Aperte, so open square programs, I think that it's a really good example because first of all, as I said before, we started from 2 experimental projects that we tested before, and they are 2 projects with tactical urbanism. And after this project, we did 2 public advice, 2 public calls to collect the proposal from citizens, and we received almost 100 proposal in the first public advice. and we understood that people really would like to ask for a change of the city and a transformation of streets. So we understood that also people would like to co-design with the municipality the new streets and the new space. So we started to have this co-design and co-project approach with them. So normally, after this first call, we made another call and we received more than 100 proposals. And then we choose with a single district, because in Milan we have 9 different districts. We choose 27 open squares to build during these years, and we are gonna finish our mandate, because next year we will have the election. So we are going to finish this group of more than 25 new open squares. But every time when we choose one open square, so one new intervention, we start from the proponents, and we co-design the new street with them. And for example, we choose also the painting, and we design also the furniture. We choose the furniture together. And it's iconical that now one furniture that normally is in every open square is the ping pong table. That is going to be like a symbol of the city. Also during the Olympic Games, we had the symbol of the ping pong, because we have a lot of open square now, 60 open squares with ping pong tables. And after that we co-design the square with them. I think that it's also important to mention also other 2 activities. One of them is that we always sign a collaboration agreement. So every open square has also a collaboration agreement, so we can take care about the square together, citizens, associations, schools, and administration, of course. And I think that it's also important to mention the moment of the painting, because it's a really important event that we do together. Normally we have also an association who help us to organize this moment, and it's more important than the real inauguration of the square, because it's the first activity that we do in the square, and it's the activity throughout we make also the square. And normally we do it with associations, but also with the children and residents of the street.
Thank you very much. You also share some elements of a topic I would like to go more in depth later about the local knowledge
Sorry.
and nuclear suggestions. No worries. I just wanted to stress that of course these are all very interconnected. And before going there, I just wanted to hear from Lonzi. How is the ULL in Budapest approaching this topic of participation with a sustained dialogue over time, even though we are having small interventions, and you mentioned before the open fest, but still within the place inclusive placemaking framework that we're adopting, we are also seeing a long trajectory of this initiative. So Lonzi.
Yes, thank you. Actually, it was a big topic within our ULL throughout the whole project so far, inclusivity and like participation. I mean, this is the main topic of this whole project, so it makes sense, but it is very hard. But yes, as Jorge, you also said, we should be very realistic about we are having like a 3-year-long project and only like 1.5 years really about implementation. So obviously this is not a long time when we are sustaining things. My company, Rév 8, is lucky enough to actually be involved longer term than just this 1.5 years. So obviously we already had partners before this program and we can sustain certain things from the project. But we are focusing on the fact as well that traditional participatory processes tend to be very much for upper middle class people. This is what we experience because we are a city development company, so we are doing various projects, large scale, small scale projects all over the district, that there are the type of people who are interested in participation, traditional way of sitting and talking together and drawing or building. And there are definitely groups who just cannot go there, either because the timing is very bad for them, either because they don't even hear about this information, or they don't even really understand that they have the right to participate, or they might have language barriers or accessibility issues. So what we are focusing on more in the past years is actually not these sort of participatory processes, but also trying to include other ways, for example, observing. So during this process, we also had several public space observations, because this also helps us to experience the street or the public space in a way as it is, with all sorts of people who are involved. So we can actually recognize who are present on the street, which are the groups who are missing from the street, and include groups who are not really capable of joining a traditional sit-together participation process. Also, I have one takeaway, which is I guess all of our takeaways is actually being present and being consistent is very, very important. So if you can find either a space that is like a recurring element in your project. For example, we were working in the old post office building for the whole duration of the ULL. And people already started to recognize yes, the old post office now is sort of a community space. We know about it. Or for example, we were using in our design, we decided to not use a very, I don't even know how to, very crowded, very beautiful, full of picture and illustration sort of design, because the whole street where we are is already very noisy visually. We decided to just use plain green posters with black letters in capital. And some people still in the end of our festival were I'm not sure what is Open Festival, but is it this green thing? Because we had it on molinos, on posters, on asphalt. Oh my God, how you call this? Asphalt stamps, sort of. So everywhere, in every way, we were using this, and that can help people. And what I wanted to say also, we did, as I said, we did the observing, but we did all sorts of different research processes during our ULL, and it was very important to us to not just keep all this information that we have for ourselves. We had a lot of interviews, we had environmental researches, many different things. And during the festival, we decided to sort of have a public space exhibition. So you can imagine these installations in a metallic frame with also pictures, but some text about what is some outcome of the researches that we had. So, we wanted to just show this thing and not just keep it in a drawer. Yes, we know this is happening, but point out hey, in the summer, this point is 37 degrees and it's in shade. And just some sort of fun facts on the street, but also more in-depth information. And as part of this, we also had an exhibition, which was a bit different. So it was not an information-heavy exhibition. We were working together with a curator, so it was mostly contemporary art, but all the artists and the art pieces were reflecting on certain topics that came to our focus during the ULL. So there were some art pieces which are like connected to interculturality and the differences and all the strengths and also stress of living together. There were some art pieces regarding like gypsy minority in our neighborhood, which is very relevant in our district. Also, like how lonely people can get in the city. So we were trying to create a place where people can talk about these things together and reflect on the things that we found in our research. So yes, and about vulnerable people that Kim also mentioned, what we were trying to do is focusing on all these different communities who are already existing, because our project is not super long, so it is very useful to work together with existing networks, NGOs, institutions. So we were lucky enough to work together with, for example, a homeless shelter, but also with an intercultural community who's there. So we were not trying to build our own social network. We were trying to build upon existing ones and try to act as like an interconnector who's creating the link between all of these.
Great, thank you. So we also heard already from Budapest about this integration of local knowledge into the into the changes. So maybe we could pose this question also to Kim to move on. How can local knowledge and everyday experience can be translated into practical changes in public space?
Yeah. So I was just thinking a little bit about about kind of what we've done and how I think that it links really well. I think the prior question too about kind of participation beyond consultation links with that. So how do we bring that knowledge forward? And I was just thinking about zoning, kind of so how zoning affects what people are able to do and in public space. Because there's one thing to have the consultations; it's another thing to actually be able to make the changes that people are suggesting in public spaces. And during our local policy, in-person policy event, we were talking with the planning and building department about how kind of, so we have this case, as we mentioned at the beginning, of this this residence for people with substance use disorders that's moved into the area, and there was a plan for the basement of the building to be maybe a bakery or some kind of business for the community, and there have now been some changes, and they're asking for the city to change that to a job program for people with substance use disorders, and basically the woman from the planning and building department was talking about how we really need, in order to kind of, so the community, people in the community were a bit upset about this because it was two big changes to the space in a really short period of time. And so she was talking about how could the planning and building department have some sort of emergency brake, basically to when there is kind of when you have had consultations and you have kind of built this knowledge from local people saying maybe this isn't working yet, or we need more time, how could you kind of implement that into practice? So that's kind of one side of it, is kind of bringing the consultations into practical change, and how different organizations could work with ways to implement that, and that might mean stopping something rather than practically doing something. And on the other side of our project, we've been working a lot with the Voice of Nature, and that has been, I don't want to say easier in some ways, but a little bit easier in terms of how do we kind of take local knowledge. So working with different people. So we had an open call for microforest recently that we're doing together with the Oslo trees, which is a part of the municipal planning and building department. And so looking at kind of how ecosystem knowledge, which is a type of local knowledge, it can be translated into practical change. And we had local people, because the municipality said we can't, it was difficult for them to put out an open call for private spaces if they want to put a microforest on a private space. And so then we had the open call for them so that we could get private, citizens who had spaces or were suggesting spaces in their neighborhoods that had knowledge about these spaces and how they could be used and who was already using them, what's happening there. So bringing this local knowledge, and then so that the city could learn where perhaps something like that could fit best. And we were actually talking today with an organization that works again with people that formerly lived on the street. And they were talking about being involved with a project separate from us, but developing like a park, with the city. So how do you kind of bring this kind of knowledge that exists and exchange it between the different actors that could use it? So this kind of cross silo cooperation.
Great to hear this, Kim. To all of our viewers, before moving on with the final question, I will also remind you that there is a space for Q&A at the end of this webinar. So the last 10 minutes of this webinar, we'll be having this Q&A. So you can already start thinking of some question in the meantime. And before going there, Kim, you mentioned about this exchange of knowledge, right? That you really get from people, but to what extent is it possible to build trust then between regular citizens and public institutions, especially nowadays when there is when democracy is challenged? Like how can you actually work in terms of trust? How have you been approaching this in your ULL? And also, if this can lead also to long-term social infrastructure, then this trust enhanced.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I think it's kind of what we've been trying to do, but building trust and inclusion, like we talked about, is a really long-term process. So it's not a matter of sometimes talking about inclusion, people think about putting in a ramp instead of stairs, and that's a type of inclusion. But of course, long-term inclusion means having kind of a social basis for that as well. And so that's kind of what we've tried to look at, is if we're not, even though we're a short-term project, how do we kind of think long-term? So how do we create the social basis? So one of our approaches was we had this training course during our ULL with the health department, which was called Life Happens to Us All. So it was, we had 4 sessions over 4 months with different local businesses in what they call trauma-informed training. So basically creating a common language around things like tolerance windows. That's one thing that came out of it. So, the psychologist who was leading it was talking about, how different people have different tolerance windows. Very vulnerable public space users will have a different tolerance window. I mean, we all have them different. Our tolerance windows are bigger or smaller on different days, depending on our life experiences that day. So they were talking about how, but people who have had, quite serious substance use disorders will have a very small tolerance window. And so just kind of understanding who lives around you in your neighborhood and how you're able to get along is important. But that's just kind of one side, this kind of, social kind of understanding. And then I think to build long-term inclusion, it's about building these connections that we were talking about. So we talked with some different organizations about having maybe like a neighborhood kind of annual activity. We also, how do you organize the different activities that are already going on in the neighborhood in a way that everyone is kind of included? So when the kind of small business community where we work is going to have a summer party, kind of an open summer party for the neighborhood. Could they invite this residents across the street and ask them if they could have a table and sell waffles or something, just as these ways to kind of build relationships between these different organizations, so that you recognize people in working relationships, doing things together, so that you get to know each other, so that over time, then even though everyone's not going to get along all the time, but that there is some form of trust and some form of kind of feeling like we all belong in this neighborhood, and that we kind of all have a say, and that you know who to speak with and who to if there are issues. And I think going back also to like our vulnerable public space group, one way that we kind of reached out to them, I talked about, was going and doing interviews with them, because they're not going to show up at a normal neighborhood meeting and put their hand up and stand up. That's hard enough for most people, and kind of have their say. So we went out to them, to their own spaces, with their staff present in places where people felt comfortable, and just asked them about their needs. So I think that building trust is always about personal relationships, or in many ways. And so how do you kind of build this over time, and then create those long-term connections with people in the community who are going to be working there.
Thank you, Kim. And you mentioned you're working on a neighborhood scale, so we also have different scales. And from neighborhood scale, I will go more to a lower scale. In the case of the ULL in Budapest, Alonsi, how are you? How are you working on the issue of trust and inclusion for long-term social infrastructure?
Yes, I think at the end of our ULL, I would say we built trustful relationships in certain aspects. For example, we got into, I think, a very good close relationship with the newcomer entrepreneurs, where we could count on them, they could count on us, because it was a strongly related little community who came to the Open Festival and occupied these places. So that was, I think that was a very good thing. In general, what we were talking about, and I found this metaphor, or not even metaphor, but phrase that one of my colleagues, Arpad, said on one of our meetings, is basically what we are trying to do is providing opportunities for people to experience the same. And I think it's a very beautiful phrase, because many times people are not able to do that just because of their financial situation, or like not even open exclusion of groups, but we all know that certain groups are not feeling involved in many situations in our cities. So yeah, I think this is what we were trying to do as much as we could. And like one moment that we had recently at the end of the Open Festival was a community dinner that we had. First of all, it was prepared by the international community that I mentioned before. This is an NGO working with both people coming from European countries, but also all over the world. So some of them have a refugee background, but not all of them. And we also have a lot of Ukrainian people in Hungary right now. So these people were actually cooking for us. And then we invited people to eat together for free. We only said that you can only get some food if you sit at the table. So we don't want to have like a community kitchen when you stand in a queue. If you want to join us, you have to sit at the table, and we created a very long table. And I think it was a beautiful moment, even though obviously I saw some people who were a bit in a unsure position, because like someone was sitting next to them who would not necessarily have dinner with them on a regular term. But I think this is the most that we can do in a project like this, is to try to focus on the groups that are actually in the social environment of this place, and try to make these links between people. And and let's hope that this experience can show them that these people are here and we can exist together. And obviously we don't have to all be friends, but that's never gonna happen.
To conclude, then, it would be very great to hear from a different scale and perspective from the municipality of Milan. How do you work how do you work on the trust that is necessary to sustain this long-term project, especially considering you have a policy with a bigger trajectory?
Of course, this is the more difficult part of the process, and I think that trust is built through an ongoing relationship and also through the ability of public institutions to demonstrate that they are listening to citizens' needs and concerns. But also, I think that if the result of the participatory process are not considered in the decision making, it could be the opposite effect. So it makes people less willing to take part in the future. So, for example, I was thinking about women because we understood that in the public space there are more men than women, and also, for example, people from other countries they use less the public space. Also, for example, the open square. It's more common to find men or young people playing ping pong or playing at the open square, but less women. So, for example, we started a listening process with them about their perception of safety in public space. And through this process, we collected their concerns, experience, and especially related to areas they perceived as unsafe. And this is a typical example where we started to listening people, but then we didn't have money to answer to their requests. And so one of the main challenges was how to respond in a concrete way to these needs, and it was really important to be believable and also to have their trust in the administration. And so, for example, in this case we choose only two pilot projects, and we asked also to private to help us to earn money to try these pilots. And these pilots were focused on improving lighting in a specific location, and in particular we choose two underpasses. And I think that is a good example to understand how sometimes also to start with the participatory process and to listening people, of course is really important, but it could be also difficult for the administration to find a way how to respond in a concrete way. So of course I think that for the trust is important to find a new way and also new collaboration, for example with private organization or with the association, to find a way to respond. Okay, not in the big way, we couldn't respond to all the requests of people, but for example to show that you can try with some pilot to give a kind of response and to change a little bit the perception, for example, like in this case.
Thank you very much, Vanya. That's good to hear about this. We are right on time to open also the floor to the Q&A session. And before this final part, I also wanted to remind that there will be a final publication of the project. There will come in November, the inclusivity book. And yeah, we can move right away towards the question, because I see one question already. Maybe this is again to continue the discussion with you, Vanya, because because it implies the ownership, and this is very much related to how public, private, or different private owners maybe also. But Nice wrote, does any of the speakers have experience with different forms of ownership over the space and or project to build long-term participation? And also Kim, sorry, do you also want to?
Yeah, I have a bit of an answer to that, but I can talk after Vanya.
Please, no, if you have a direct answer, great.
No, you can answer.
No, it's just quick. I just because it was one thing I was thinking of speaking about too was that so I have a good example of that in Oslo, where in the area where we're working, that which wasn't under this project in 1999, a public park was. There were local residents who were really active. They started basically what we'd call now tactical urbanism, putting in a basketball hoop, very kind of DIY at the time, and then they were able to actually get a contract with the city. And I think that is, to me, still one of the best examples of being able to collaborate with the city, because they have a contract. So they ended up making an organization, and they have a contract. It's called the Old City Sport and Leisure organization, and they have a long-term contract to take care of the park. So the city basically gives them the rights, and then they, because of this contract, they've been able to reach out to donors, also nonprofit organizations, and they've built this kind of massive skate park, concert venue, built fruit trees and kids park, and it's completely maintained by the members, because there's clear ownership. And I think that's really important, is that often these projects, when they're owned by the city, or you have local people who want to commit time, but they don't know if the city's just going to come in and completely destroy all the work that they've done over time. So I think this is a really good example. Unfortunately, in Oslo, it doesn't seem to happen anymore. But that was like a good case of 25 years ago, someone deciding that, yes, this group could have a contract with the city.
Very interesting. Great. You took the lead, Kim. Vanya?
I was thinking about the collaboration agreement that I mentioned before, because they are in every squares, and we have some squares from 2018, so 6 years, 5 years. And I think that it's important to think, for example, that this collaboration agreement, they have a duration of 3 years, but normally they are renewed afterwards. And however, we are currently working on revising the regulation of the collaboration agreement, because one of the main requests is from the association and from the local actors is to extend their duration. And I think that it's important because they help build more stable relationship between the municipality and communities, and they allow participation and shared care of public spaces to develop in a more continuous and sustainable way. And I think that it's also important to mention that, for example, there are 10 of these open squares that now were transformed in permanent squares. So before, they were built with tactical urbanism, so they were not permanent, and normally a square realized by tactical urbanism should stay 2 or 3 years, like experimentation, and then the administration can decide the future of the square. And now 10 of these squares were transformed in permanent squares. So they were streets, then they were pedestrianized, and now they are permanent squares. So I think that is an example to long-term relationship also with the citizens, because when we decided to transform them then in a permanent square, is because the associations and the residents asked for this, and because they took care about the squares during this period.
Vanya, thank you. And you also touch a point that is mentioned in another question about the success criteria to engage in continuously participation. So could you tell us a bit more about indeed the success criteria that reveal the capacity to engage with a private organization and to continue? Yeah, so you say you renew the agreement, but this is based on what criteria?
Yeah, of course, we can say that the success criteria, of course, are we have quantitative criteria, but also quality. We could see also the quality of the square. So, of course, first of all, we try to understand if people are happy about this square. So, if they start to have to do a different use of this public space, because before it was a space for cars, so we try to collect data to understand if now people start to do a different use of the square. So if they spend time in the benches, in the tables, if they play there, if they wait, for example, children in front of the school. So the first criteria is how this new space is used by citizens, for example, and also how he's alive. So, for example, if the associations organize events, for example, for children, for young people, for family. So this is why also we signed this collaboration agreement, because we want to push the association to make alive these spaces. So of course, how many people stay there, and how many events and activities are there, are some success criteria for us to understand also if it's worth to transform in a permanent square this street.
Okay, just want to be precise shortly. So these criteria are set by the collaboration agreement and by the municipality of Milan.
Yes, from the municipality.
Okay.
Yes, and we also, through the collaboration agreement, we set, we can say that we set this criteria, because we engaged the association, and we decided what are the things that the administration have to do during this time, but also all the goals that the associations has to have during this time. So how they have to take care about the square, how can make alive the square during these 3 years, and then we will check if they did events, if they spend time there, if they took care about the square. So these are the criteria that we have also in the collaboration agreement, of
Thank
course.
you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was I wanted to highlight this part of the agreement, and yeah, we also have a hand raised here, and I will go with with Kirtana, and then the question here in the chat, and then I will close because we should close already now. But we have had a lot of participation today, luckily. So yeah, let's have the final two questions.
Yeah, so hi, I'm joining from India. It was a great panel. Thank you so much for all the panelists. And yeah, my question, what really stood out for me was that there were different challenges for each city with governance. So I wanted to know if there was some kind of principles that could be set forth across for inclusive placemaking, which could be transferred across cities, and also maybe some kind of non-negotiables so that all of these principles can be followed in placemaking across cities. So is that something that can be done? Any of the panelists?
I can start, maybe. I think that's it's a really good question. It's what we're working on. We're working on a guidebook based on how we take these because each city had different target groups, different challenges, different contexts. So now now that we're closing off all of our activities, we're coming together. This is part of it. So this is really interesting to hear that question, because now we're looking at what principles are emerging from our reflections from our activities, and then how those can be applied across different contexts. So I don't know if I have an answer right now. I mean, I could say from our Oslo perspective, a lot of the things that we've been talking about today, that we have different approaches to what an inclusive city is, and what we talked about in our consortium meetings a lot is that you can't take one of these tools and just apply it even in the context that it's been used in, because it can't be separated from the pool of tools that it's been used within. So I'd say if we talk about a non-negotiable, for me it would be taking any kind of action out of context, both in a different place, but also out of the context within which the building up of activities with which it's been involved in won't necessarily work. So thinking of these always as long-term processes and building relationships over time. That's one what I would say, one takeaway that's not negotiable, is looking at all different sides. So Placemaking Europe likes to talk about hardware, software, and orgware. So what are the physical things that you're doing? How are they organized? How are they governed? And then also, what are the activities that you're doing around them? And I think so every time you do any kind of intervention, to think about those, think about it in those terms, I think really is one way that I would, I guess, start to answer that. But it's a great difficult question.
Thank you, Kim. Lonsi, very shortly, because we have to.
Yes, sure. I also want to say that your question is very important, and a big question also for us now that we are summarizing. I would say one unnegotiable is to actually do the research and the stakeholder mapping and everything in the beginning, because even if my company is very much involved in this place where we are working, still you will find new actors. You will need to understand the hidden network and try to build on the existing ones, I think, if you can, because that can be very, very useful, and it can be a bit weird to actually start to build something without knowing where you are. So that's for me the step zero to actually understand the existing environment.
Okay, great. And I think this also answers the final question from YouTube that was connected to the neighborhood scale. If they say, I would like to ask you about the neighborhood scale. If you had the project to actually assess the quality of life generally in the whole neighborhood, and if so, could you please talk about it? Lonzi, you already mentioned this. Just a final one word, really.
Yeah, I don't want to say that we actually can have a big impact on people's quality of life, but I really hope that we brought something new. At least in our case, it was like a bigger neighborhood scale. The Open Festival was on quite a big, like 2, 3, 4 square kilometer area. So I think one thing that is very important for me in the placemaking community is to set realistic goals, because I feel like we could talk in pink. I hope that there are groups of people whose quality of life changed because there are new opportunities and services in their area, or they went through some programs where they experienced their city in a very different way. I don't want to have the expectation that it happened with everyone who's a resident in this neighborhood. But that's okay. I think that's totally fine.
Great. Thank you, Lonzi. Rosaria?
So that wraps up for today. Thank you so much for all our viewers also on YouTube and for your engagement today. Thank you for all the questions. I would just like to let you know that both the webinar live streams will be available for you to view afterwards, so you can send them to your colleagues who've missed, who would have liked to listen in. Yeah, so you'll receive it via email. We'll also share it on our socials. And yeah, I'd like to wish you a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much to our speakers and to our moderator, Jorge, for the questions and everything.